Hi, this is Wendy, and today's video is part of the new Taylormadecards4u Inspiration Team monthly video hop featuring the newest Taylormadecards4u digital kit, the Soda Fountain Shop. The kit is chock full of elements from digital backgrounds, a menu, and some vintage ephemera pieces to add to your projects. Taylormadecards4u is also the 2020 sponsor for the Crafter's Castle Challenge blog. The prize this month is the Soda Fountain Shop kit, so be sure to link up for your chance to win. And as a bonus, if you use any digital products from Taylormadecards4u, you get an extra entry. So be sure to check the description box below for links, details, and a supplies list for today's project. I thought I'd get a creative jump start for the new year with an art journal layout. And this is the inspiration photo for my layout. And I wanted to replicate the perspective in the photo for a three-dimensional feel. So I'm going to share with you how I transform the images to create that effect. Now I open the images in Photoshop Elements, and I'm going to select the image that I want to transform, and I'm going to move it to a new document. And I'm going to use the skew tool in the transformed options. And I'm going to grab the upper left corner and drag it down slightly. And I'll do the same for the bottom left corner. Click the green check mark to accept the changes. And I'm ready to print. Now I've already printed, transformed and resized all the images, and I'll be using on my layout, and I printed them on some white cardstock. And I also printed out a template for the soda fountain counter, the area that I'm going to do like a 10 tile. And then printed out the title on some mixed media cardstock that I'm going to put in my 6x6 disc-bound journal. And I'm going to use a stencil from Club Scrap. This is the Happy Camper stencil. And I'm going to create a grid pattern for the flooring. And this is a piece of 10 Second Studios metal, and I'm going to use the silver aluminum side with some of the metal tools to emboss that, or deboss that. And I'm going to use a couple of colors of Dylusions ink sprays, and I think that is the turquoise and the bubblegum pink, and then some black Dylusions acrylic paint to use with the stencil. I'm going to start with the background, and I'm just spraying really generously with water, and you can see that the ink is bleeding just a little bit at the top up there, and that doesn't matter. I'm going to fix that in just a little bit. I'm just trying to get some color down. And I'm just going to spray a couple of those colors, and I'm going to blot with a paper towel. Now that's really wet, so I'm going to dry that. I'm just going to use a heat tool for that. And now I'm going to work on my grid pattern for the flooring. And I'm not being super careful with this. I just want to get a little pattern down. A lot of this is going to be covered up by my elements later. And now I'm going to work on my counter. And I wanted this to have that neat chrome vintage feel from a 1950s diner. So I've created a little template, and I'm going to trace this onto that piece of metal. Now I'm going to be working with a acrylic mat and two foam mats, and one of them is thick, one of them is thin. I'm going to use that thinner mat because I don't want the impression to be really deep. So I'm just going to trim out some of this metal. And then I'm going to trace an outline with the refining tool. Now, these tools are no longer available. 10 Second Studios is no longer open, but you could use an embossing stylus, the end of a paintbrush, a real dull pencil, but you just don't want to punch a hole through the metal. Now, this metal is no longer available either. But there's a new company called Renia that is selling metal foil. That's a great option. Or some of the Ranger metal, aluminum tape. And I've also included in the supplies list a couple of options, and one of them is from Dick Blick. It's some tooling foil. It's a little bit thicker. And if you purchase using the links that I provide, you'll get a discount. Now I'm just creating a design using a Club Scrap grid ruler, and I wanted it to have a quilted, like a quilted design, and you'll see when I'm finished in just a minute. So I'm just creating some diagonal lines, and they're about 1/2 inch apart, and that grid ruler really helps line everything up. And there's my design, and now I'm going to do some antiquing, kind of like you would do with metal jewelry. So I'm using that black paint, and I'm just pressing that to get that down in all of those little grooves. So I put a really pretty heavy coat on there. And while it's still wet, I'm going to rub off the excess with a dry paper towel. So you can see all the black down in those grooves. I'm going to give that a dry with a heat tool to make sure it doesn't come off. And now I'm just going to rub off the excess with a little sponge sanding block and make that shiny look like chrome. And now I'm going to finish up my background. I'm just going to add some some black soot distress ink to the edges of my paper. It gives it a finished look. It also hides imperfections. Like there's a couple places where the ink didn't reach the edge of the paper, so this just makes it look a little more finished. And I'll do the same with all of my little ephemera pieces that I've fussy cut. Now, this little bar stool was not included with the kit. It is a PNG image that I found online. If you're interested, I'll be glad to share a link to that. I just love how that little guest check came out. That's so cute. Now I'm going to work on the sign just a little bit. I wanted this to look like a vintage neon sign. So I'm tracing around that, giving it a little bit of a shadow, and I'm offsetting that just a little bit with a Staedtler pigment liner. It's real thin. I think that's the 0.3 millimeter pen, and I'm just tracing around that to give it a bit of a shadow. And I've already started attaching some of my pieces, and I added some double-sided tape to the back of this metal. You could probably use some glue, but I know that double-sided tape is really sticky and it isn't going to come off. And now I'm just going to trim little bits that are hanging off the edge there. And I'm ready to start assembling all my pieces. This is my favorite part. I love how when everything starts to come together, it's almost like I can't get it onto the paper fast enough. And I'm just using some quick dry adhesive glue. Because the paper is on top of the metal, it should dry pretty quickly. And this is the fun part when I start adding all of these little final touches here. It just makes my art journal layout start to come alive. Now the quality of these little digital images is pretty fantastic. I've actually enlarged them, and they still look great. So this is fun digital kits to play with at Taylormadecards4u. Now this is the Create 365 Happy Planner hole punch, and I've punched those holes so that will fit onto the discs in my 6x6 journal. And I like that. I saw it on Vicky Papiano's YouTube channel. I mean, it's a great way to have an art journal because you can pull the pieces out. I mean, I do like my Dilutions journal, but I like that I can lay everything flat and then reattach them. Now I'm just touching up my sign with a Pentel brush pen, just to make it look a little bit brighter since some of that ink has faded. And I'm adding some diamond stickles for some sparkle. And my last step is to do some shading, and I'm using some Copic sketch markers for this. But you could use really, I mean, whatever markers that you have in your stash. The big brush markers actually work really well. But I like using the alcohol markers because they fade just a little bit, so they're not like real harsh lines. And I think I started out with the number 2 color. It's not super dark. I just like the 3D effect that it gives. And you can also draw in the metal with the alcohol markers. And I'm going back with a little bit of a darker color. I think this is either the number 4 or the number 6. And here's some close-ups of my finished layout. And I just love all those little pieces. The metal looks great. I love that effect. Well, I hope you've had fun and are inspired. And don't forget to leave me a comment and like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to check out all the fabulous digital kits at Taylormadecards4u and link up on the Crafters Castle Challenge blog for a chance to win. And thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.